There you are.
I am here.
Okay. All right, Chris, we're going to take it away. I'm handing it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Cheryl. And want to give a shout out to my wife, Cheryl, and for putting this all together and on the slide deck, because PowerPoint is not me. So, but this is fantastic what we put together here. Right now, the lot of questions and comments about the funding packages and what's going on with the various options that have come out of all the activity in Washington, D.C. over the last couple of weeks. So we're going to try to go through that. We're going to cover a lot of ground, so we're going to cover everything from soup to nuts. So next slide, please, Cheryl. We're going to cover the income tax filing dates and the changes in that. We're going to cover the 2020 economic stimulus package. In the, the income tax filing date, anything. What's that?
Yeah. Go ahead and just go ahead and go through the agenda. Okay. Sorry.
Sure. The 2020 economic stimulus package, we're going to cover the Coronavirus Response Act. That's payroll help today. That's going to cover with federal subsidies to cover sick pay that you may pay, FMLA that you may pay. These are federal programs. These are not related to state of Washington programs or what you may have internally within your business. The Paycheck Protection Program, which is a forgivable loan. The SBA Disaster Relief, which is an immediate cash infusion into your business. And then we'll talk about commercial loans. And if you have one, a commercial real estate loan, SBA and bank direct loans and options you may have there. Getting into the income tax filing dates on the next slide. If it said April 15th on it and it was a due date, that has now been moved to July 15th. So July 15th is the new April 15th for this year. There is no limit as to the amount of income or tax debt. April 15th is now July 15th. So you now have for your HSA IRA deposits, you have until July 15th to make those. First quarter tax estimates, of course, they were due April 15th. They are now due July 15th. And as I said, the date April 15th was moved to July 15th. June 15th was not changed. And so the second quarter estimate is still due on June 15th. So you make the two becomes before one, but this is the federal government. And so this is not a joke, of course. Let's go to the next one. And if I'm talking too fast, Cheryl, if you please let me know.
You're fine, Chris. There's just a transition in the slides that's taking longer than
I got you. The income tax filing dates for businesses only, the only taxes extended are those due April 15th. The information returns prepared by S corporations, partnerships, those are due as normal. Those were due March 15th, and those were due March 15th. They were extended to September 15th. C Corps have a due date of April 15th, and those are now due July 15th. All payroll taxes are due as normal. There is an extension available to December of 2022. We're going to cover that in another slide. So just another note, the C corporations, they changed the due date of the C corporations a year or two ago from March 15th to April 15th. That is now July 15th for C Corps. Okay, next if we can. Let's talk about the stimulus package. This is where all the money is supposed to get going, and where we're going to see the first injection of cash into the economy from the federal government. The checks are based upon your 2018 return if the 2019 has not been filed. If you have not filed a 2018 tax return, please, now is the time to get it filed. You can file the return electronically. If you need help getting it filed, you can contact my office or any of the other accounting offices on the island, and we will all help you trying to get that processed and through. If you use electronic means for a direct deposit or a payment of the tax, that information the IRS will use that information in direct depositing the stimulus check to you. If they don't have your bank account number, you will get a paper check, and that can take 10 to 12 weeks or longer to get that. So who will get it? If you have children under 17, you will get $500 a piece for each child that you have under the age of 17. Once they hit 17, they're out. If they're a college student and they're claimed as a dependent by you, there is no $500 for that child. If you're a married couple and you're with Social Security numbers, it's important. There's a differentiation between a TIN, a taxpayer identifying number, and a Social Security number. You must have a Social Security number, and if you're single under $75,000, you're going to get a $1,200 check. If you're a married couple over 150, you're going to get a $2,400 check. There is a phase out on the amounts on that. We're going over those amounts. I'm not going to get into that detail here today. If you're filing as head of household, $112,500 in income, up to that level, you'll get $1,200. No payment for you if you were claimed as a dependent by your parents. Okay? If no income tax filed, you won't get anything. So get something filed. On this stimulus package, there's no application required. The payments will go out. They said in the next 3 weeks. A paper notice will follow a few weeks after the check to verify that the check went to you. If you do not get the stimulus payment notated on the notice, then you should contact the IRS immediately. If you owe back taxes, your check will not be garnished. The only exception, the only reason that you will have a check garnished is if you are behind in child support. There's no income tax on the stimulus payment. People on SSI and disability will get the stimulus payments.
There you go, Chris.
There we go. In addition to the stimulus package, we have unemployment support. This is in addition to existing state unemployment. The federal government is going to add $600 per week to state unemployment benefits for up to 10 weeks. The Washington state minimum unemployment benefit is $188 a week. The maximum is $790 a week. So if someone's receiving the maximum unemployment benefit of $790 a week, they could now receive up to $1,390 a week with the federal add-on. The goal is to restore full paychecks. Unemployment benefits are meant to cover up to 40% of what your average your payment was while you were working. This should restore that full amount. This is fully taxable, by the way, on your 2020 tax returns next year. You must apply to the state of Washington Employment Security Department to receive these benefits. Who's eligible for the unemployment? Well, here's the first, okay? If you're W-2, self-employed people are now eligible for federal unemployment benefits, not state unemployment benefits, but federal. So the $600 package, you as being self-employed are entitled to, and full-time and currently unemployed. So there's actually a add-on there for people whose unemployment insurance is running out. There's an add-on to this for 13 weeks. If you're off work because you are sick, or for family care, illness, or child care, or senior care. If you're off work because of a quarantine, again, you get the extended state benefits for 13 weeks. And a new provision in this is a death of a spouse due to coronavirus. If the spouse was the primary breadwinner in the family, the other spouse is entitled to unemployment benefits. I can do a little hop, skip, and a dance here. Okay. Other helpful things coming with the stimulus package on this first round. Student loans, there's a suspension of payments and interest for the student loans. On IRA, you can take an early distribution. This is a huge difference here for people who are 59 and a half or younger. If you take up to $100,000 out of your IRA, there will be no 10% penalty. As a matter of fact, if you take the $100,000 out, you can hold on to that money for 3 years, pay it back, and there's no tax consequence at all. If after 3 years you elect not to pay it back, you can basically incorporate that into your income over the next 3 years and as taxable benefit that you took out. Again, no penalty on that. A final provision within the guidelines here are charitable contributions. A lot of people these days do not itemize their deductions any longer. With the new guidelines, you can take up to $300 per year of charitable contributions as an adjustment to your gross income and deduct those. If you're a large income taxpayer and you can deduct up to 100% of your charitable contributions to charity against your income. Now let's get into the Family First Coronavirus Response Act. Hello? This deals with federal sick pay and FMLA. The federal government will reimburse you for up to 80 hours paid by the paid. And we will go through the steps and how to calculate that reimbursement and how to get it in the next slide. FMLA, they'll give you 12 weeks, of which up to 10 are paid at 2/3 of up to $200 a day. The sick leave up to $511 a day. Employee qualifies if the employee is under a federal, local COVID-19 quarantine. They're under medical advice to quarantine. They have symptoms or have been diagnosed as COVID-19. Full-time up to 80 hours, part-time will receive average hours worked. The pay rate is their regular pay, not to exceed $511 a day or $5,110 in total. And even Ben Franklin is wearing a face mask, so that's a good thing. The $511 a day, by the way, was calculated as being equal to approximately $125,000 a year salary. The employer gets reimbursed all wages, taxes, and health insurance through a 100% payroll tax credit. The employer is required to post a notice coming soon. And honestly, I've been waiting for the notice. We were notified on this around the first, actually towards the last week of March that we were supposed to post the notice. Haven't seen it yet. So there's a few sample notices out there, but I have not seen the federal one that's coming. If you're self-employed, you can take the tax credit against self-employment tax and income tax equivalent to sick time pay. I have not seen an example of how the mechanics on this works yet, but I'm sure that is coming. An example of how the employer credit works on the sick pay In this example, we have an employer with a $10,000 payroll. His employer's share of FICA and Medicare for the period is $765. That's 7.65%. The employee, Sam, is paid qualifying sick leave of $1,000. The employer paid excludable health insurance, in other words, the employer's share of the health insurance coverage of $100. Sam had federal withholding of $166. Sam and the employer's share Medicare is 2.9% or $34. So the total amount qualifying for the credit is $1,300. That credit will be applied against the employer's share of the FICA Medicare tax of $765, leaving $535 of excess credit. And I've seen this in two ways. In one example that they put out, it shows that you can apply the entire $1,300 against the entire payroll tax deposit when you make your EFTPS deposit. I've also seen it where it will only count against $620, which is 6.2%, the employer's share of the FICA tax on the $10,000. And then the balance would be refunded on an IRS form. And that's supposed to be a quick refund from the IRS. So you're supposed to get that within 2 weeks or less. So that is, that's how that's supposed to work. So that's still up in the air on the mechanics of that still. Employer penalties. You want to do to avoid employer penalties is keep excellent records. And if you keep records such as in a diary, a calendar, whatever, you want to keep track of virus testing, dates and times, medical care for employees, dates and times, school closings, date, what schools are closed, the care for the children, who, what school, how many days, care for others, who and how many days. So it's just making sure that you're tracking who's getting the sick pay and why. And here is the mother of all loan forgiveness programs, the Paycheck Protection Program. It's a fully guaranteed loan by the federal government. It may be forgiven if the borrowers maintain payrolls during the crisis or restore payrolls afterwards. We're still waiting for some lenders to step up as to who will be identified offering the program. I've received notification from several, not from everyone yet. But any SBA 7A lender should be offering this program. Are you eligible? A small business under 500 employees, a 501c3 such as the Chamber of Commerce with less than 500 employees. If you're an individual, sole proprietor, an independent contractor, an individual self-employed with regular business, if you're an Indian tribe, if you're a 501c19 veterans organizations, perhaps like Vashon VFW, what are lenders looking for? They want to make sure that you are in business prior to February 15th of 2020 and had employees, payroll, or contractors. They are not looking for a borrower who is unable to get credit elsewhere. They are not looking for a personal guarantee. There is no collateral on this loan program. The amount of the loan is going to include, in calculating what you deserve to get or what you merit, what your wages, tips, vacation, paid leave, your health insurance premiums, the retirement benefits, your state, local tax on compensation. That would be labor and industries, employment security, FMLA. This will exclude any income, any employee with an income in excess of $100,000. We'll just take the first $100,000 of that employee's income. People with residence outside of the United States and credit taken in Coronavirus Response Act for sick leave or FMLA. Throughout this program, they do try to make sure that you do not double dip and get benefit for two programs at the same time. How much can you borrow? The loan can be up to 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. So we're going to basically take your payroll cost for the year, divide it by 12, multiply that by 2.5. How much can be forgiven? Expenses for the 8 weeks post loan application. That means the day you file the loan application is the date that this starts calculating. So if you file a loan application today, that means that your behavior and your spending habits for the next 8 weeks are going to determine how much can be forgiven. This is including payroll, healthcare premium cost for employees, mortgage interest and rent on business space, and utilities on business space. The forgiveness amount must contain 75% payroll cost. That's incredibly important. If the loan amount is less than the expenses in the designated 2020 8-week period, the loan is forgiven. If the loan amount is more than the expenses in the designated period, the balance will be paid off in an SBA loan. If a COVID-19 SBA emergency grant has been used, it will be deducted from the forgiveness amount. I have not seen where this necessarily reduces the amount of the Paycheck Protection Program payment or allocation. But it will deduct from the amount available for forgiveness. Here's an example. Your average 2019 monthly payroll is $10,000. You average $2,000 a month for healthcare costs for your employees. That's a total of $12,000. Times 2.5, that's $30,000 that you're entitled to in terms of your Paycheck Protection Program grant. The forgiveness amount going forward from the date of application, 8 weeks payroll cost $20,000. You have 8 weeks of healthcare at $4,000. You have 8 weeks of mortgage rent, $6,000. 8 weeks of utilities of $2,000. That's a total of $32,000 there. And if you look at the $20,000 for payroll plus the $4,000 in healthcare, that's $24,000, which magically is 75% of the $32,000. That is that means that this entire amount will be forgiven. And let's talk about the emergency stimulus loan grant. This is also known as the Economic Impact Disaster Loan. Who is eligible? Small business concerns with or without employees, independent contractors, cooperatives and employee-owned businesses, private nonprofits, tribal small businesses. You must have been in operation since January 31st, 2020. This is available January 31st, 2020 through December 31st of 2020. If you apply for or receive a COVID-19 EIDL, you may still apply for a Paycheck Protection Program. The amounts granted through the EIDL will be deducted from the PPP loan forgiveness. The amount is $10,000. You're to receive the proceeds in 3 days. That's currently delayed. I have not gotten any notice of anyone receiving this grant. I have not, nobody to my knowledge. I've received an email this morning from a national organization, and on a national survey, no bank has released any money on this at all. So there's no payments on these yet. So that should be coming out though shortly. Do you have an existing commercial loan? There's a couple of different kinds of commercial loans to talk about here. you have an SBA guaranteed loan, call them. SBA is ready to work with you to take care of your SBA loan mortgage needs. And they are ready to defer payments or work out a payment schedule with you to get you through this hump. If you have a bank loan, call your lender. Extensions and workouts are available. Many of the small business bankers that I've been working with have now been reclassified as loan workout specialists. And they're spending a tremendous amount of time working with clients who have commercial real estate, both commercial residential, such as apartment houses, and strip centers, office buildings, whatnot. And they are renegotiating, working out payment arrangements with them. I shouldn't say renegotiating, they're working out payment arrangements with them.
All right,
Do we have
Chris,
any
that was a
questions?
lot. We sure do. That was a lot of information. So can you hear me okay, Chris?
I can.
Great. So the first question that came up in the queue was, what if you are a business that operates pay through owner draws rather than a payroll or paycheck system? And just as you're thinking about how to respond to that, Chris, I just want to let everybody know in the webinar, you can go ahead and type in your questions into the Q&A button. And if not, you can also put them in the chat, but it's easier if it's in the Q&A. All right, so Chris, what if our business, if you're a business that operates through owner draws rather than a payroll or paycheck system?
Well, then you're self-employed, you're a sole proprietor or a partner, and there's special guidelines for that. As I said earlier, I haven't seen the mechanics of how that's working out yet on that, but yes, you are qualified to get, number one, the economic impact disaster loan, and number two, you do qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program. So both of those you do qualify for. And three, you also qualify to receive state unemployment or federal unemployment benefits of $600 a week.
Okay, that's great. Next question up from Becky is, my bar or restaurant is closed. Do you have to pay those employees while they aren't working? Or do you just have to guarantee you'll bring them back after we're able to reopen? And this, I think, is tying back to the payroll protection program. There is some confusion, I know, as I've been talking to people about whether you can still apply if you aren't actually employing those people at the time. So could you just give us a little insight into that, Chris?
Sure. You are not required to hire the employees back right now. The idea on the Paycheck Protection Program, you have to understand that a lot of these things were rolled out in a hurried fashion. And we all remember when Obamacare was rolled out a few years ago, and there was a lot of confusion and unease as to what the processes really were. This is very similar to that, and I see a lot of similarities. I think what we have here is a very good intent. I think the processes were not in place properly initially, and I think it's gonna shake out and be okay. But right now, it's just trying to figure out how best to navigate the labyrinth that's been placed before us. So no, you are not required to. The Paycheck Protection Program, it calculates the payroll costs based upon the 8 weeks from the date of loan application. So if you are able to restore your payroll sometime during that, there's a provision in there that says that you're going to there's a future tense inside the actual wording that you either have it or you're going to have it. I'm not sure how the going to have it is going to play out, but we can do things with your payroll or something like that. Perhaps increasing the owner's pay to get to that 75% number, or perhaps using some of that language of that you will restore the payrolls to those levels as soon as you can. As soon as we get more clarity on that, we'll be more clear in our answers. So I apologize for not being clear.
No, I think that there's a lot of unknowns, Chris, and we are planning on doing follow-ups on all of these different programs because these are hot off the press. And as I think you just said, a lot of people are trying to figure out how to actually get them off the ground for people. Next question up. Mortgage expense for forgiveness. Does it have to have been booked on the business? So in other words, does it have to be, I think, part of your P&L in order to be forgiven?
On the mortgage?
Mortgage expense,
Well,
yes.
nobody's forgiving mortgages, okay? That's number one. The SBA is not forgiving. The banks are not forgiving. It's not what they do. What they do is that they'll work out a forbearance or they'll restructure a payment plan to get you through this period. Most commercial lenders, when you do a commercial real estate loan, that they're for a 3, 5, 7-year period, and there's a prepayment penalty, you agree not to. And those things, the banks, I have not seen anybody in my discussions that they're entertaining changing the loan terms. The SBA, they can be a little bit more flexible because they're a federal agency, but they're just going to work with you and perhaps with some payment extensions and whatnot. So loan forgiveness, no, that's not gonna happen. How you have your, excuse me, how you have your ownership of the property structured and whatnot, I can't speak to that. But if you basically purchase the property and you're leasing it to the business, then that's a business related payment. So in one way or the other. So if you're making a rent payment to yourself, and then that would qualify under the payment protection program. If you're making mortgage interest payments through the business, then that would qualify. So however you're doing it. Yeah.
Okay. Next question up, for clarification, it's not really a question. Just want clarification about the 8-week forgiveness period begins on the origination date of the loan, or is that on the date of the application? Could you just clarify when that 8-week forgiveness period is supposed to begin?
It's on the date of application.
It is on the date of application.
That is my understanding right now. Over this last weekend, I received multiple updates on Saturday and multiple updates on Sunday on provisions within this act, and so it's a moving target. A lot of these questions are going to be answered as we work through it. But at this point right now, the date that you apply for the loan is the date that the 8 weeks begins.
Okay, and then a following question to that, Chris. How would then people be able to use that money if the loan is taking weeks to come back? We've heard that it could take anywhere from a month.
You're going to have to front that money.
Okay. All right.
That's, that's it's money. It's based upon how you use your money in that period. So I'm sure that there's going to be clarification on that because that's not going to work for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But that's the verbiage that I have and that I'm working with.
Okay, great. Here's a question. What if March 2019 through April 2020 salaries are higher?
I don't think that's a problem.
It's not. Okay.
March 19th, if they're higher, the idea here is to restore payrolls to what they were last year at a minimum. So that's why the 75% number, using your payroll this year during that 8-week period, they're using that as the amount. Excuse me, back up. March 19th, April 2020, we're just taking your 2019 year, your calendar year payroll.
Oh, so you're just taking January of 2019 to December of 2019, and that's what you're looking at comparing to what you believe you're going to be in 2020, and that then would provide you with the difference.
Right, and to support your numbers, they will be requesting, and there's a lot of documentation, and that you're going to need And let me just, this is a great segue into the documentation you're going to be required to provide to the bank when you make your Paycheck Protection Program application. You're going to need, aside from the application, you're going to need copies of your articles of incorporation or your operating agreement if you're an LLC, your copy of your business license if you're a sole prop. 2019 and first quarter 2020, if completed, 941s, which are your federal payroll tax return, your 940, they want copies of your state withholding and state unemployment forms. So that doesn't make any sense, but you've got to provide your state unemployment tax returns. Bank statements from January of 2019 through February of 2020. They want a 12-month trailing P&L. In other words, you want to see how your P&L is doing month by month, trailing over 12 months. They want a payroll summary report, including documentation of health insurance premiums paid. They want to include documentation of any pension or retirement benefits that you pay out to the administrator. A breakdown of payroll if we're using vacation, dismissal pay, healthcare, and or retirement. And they want current ID for all borrowers. So that's that's the laundry list of documentation that needs to accompany your Paycheck Protection Program application. Yeah. And by the way, this is nowhere in the documentation that SBA provides with the application.
Okay. And Chris, just so you know, we did put up a little calculation sheet as well as a detailed list of things that people will need to pull for the payroll protection plan on the chamber website on the COVID page, so that people actually have that list and can reference it there, because it is a pretty long list and actually quite a bit of information to pull in order to get that application complete. Depending on the size of your business. And I think what you just talked about was a question that came in from Jeff. Can you walk through the details of the payroll protection average 2019 salary? Along the same lines. The question here is, are income, Medicare, FICA subtracted? Our IRS 2019 filing sufficient documentation. So again, can you just walk through the details of the payroll protection program average 2019 salary? What's included?
The easiest way to put this together is to take, if you take your payroll register, you take your gross payroll for the year, you add the employer's share of Social Security tax, you add the employer's share of the Medicare tax, you add your cost for FMLA, labor and industries, and employment security. If you offer other employee benefits such as health insurance, the employer's share of that benefit, and the employer's matching contribution on any retirement benefits that you might pay. So your total employer cost for that each staff member, you take a look at what your whole cost is for the year, you divide that by 12 times 2.5, that's your loan amount.
Okay, and so you're not deducting income or Medicare or FICA?
Well, the income tax is withheld from the employee, and so that's included in the gross wages. And those are deductible taxes that are taken out of the employee's pay are included in the gross pay.
Okay. All right. Just trying to make sure we're answering the questions that are coming in. Next one.
Yeah.
No, I think there's a lot here to work through. Here's another questioner also around the payroll protection program. What is the advantage of the payroll protection program versus unemployment plus the $600 weekly? Are businesses going to be penalized on their ESD rate because of the unemployment being filed related to the COVID-19?
I do not know. I have not received anything from the state of Washington. I think they're caught with their hands down, with their pants down on this. They don't know. They have not released anything regarding the taxability of this yet. So I haven't seen anything.
Okay, and just to so you know,
I'm assuming that she's probably correct.
Yeah, and just so you know, we are going to have Deborah Diamond doing on next Tuesday, the 14th. Deborah Diamond's going to walk through from unemployment and sort of considerations for that. So that may be something that you want to join and be able to ask her those questions, just to kind of put it out there for you. And then there's another question here. I believe the mortgage question is in reference to the payroll protection allowable expenditures that includes the mortgage interest. I think you kind of addressed that, but I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that as the mortgage interest piece of the payroll protection program.
Right. Your expenses that you pay in mortgage interest or in rent are allowable expenses to use the proceeds from your grant or loan on the payroll protection program. So if you, in the case that we were discussing, she basically owned the property personally. And so whether she was leasing the building then to the business and the business was paying rent, that rent would be an includable expense. If the business is paying the note, then the interest would be expensed if it's handled properly. So it's just the interest portion. The principal portion is not a allowable expense making your calculation.
Great. Thank you for that clarity. All right. So here's another question. How is my 2019 income calculated? If I waited to file my business taxes with my 2019 tax return and I filed as married. So how is my 2019 income calculated if I waited to file my business taxes with my 2019 tax return and I also filed as married?
I don't understand the question. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think the first part is really around how is actually, Anita, if you could put in some clarification in the Q&A, I can then ask Chris that a little bit more. I don't want to get your question wrong. Here's another question for you. We'll just take a quick break on that one and come to a different one. I have 2 employees and added a third in December. I can't average 12 months ending March 2020 as my average is higher. Do I have to average over 12 months and only calendar year 2019?
Well, I want you to think about the documentation that they're requesting to support your payroll numbers. And you're not necessarily going to be penalized for hiring that extra person and having that person on payroll through this period. You can sure put that together and run it through. There's nothing that says you can't. So we could absolutely do that. Yeah.
Okay.
You could run it the second, third, fourth quarter of 19 and the first quarter of 2020. You could run that. I don't see any reason why you can't, especially with the documentation that they're asking for.
Okay, great. And thank you for that, Chris. Hopefully that helped. Next question up is, I'm an S Corp. Is it best to apply for both an EIDL and the payroll protection plan or program, or just the payroll protection program? Is there any reason to not apply for both?
No.
If they're an S Corp?
No, there's not. You know, and okay. if you have any part of the program that's not forgivable, they're gonna basically be providing financing at 4% or less on the on any of the unforgivable over a long period, over an extended period of time. This is actually not a bad way for you to perhaps recapitalize your business or something else like that. You can get some good out of this, out of a bad situation. So that's kind of the way I see it. Get what you can at this point and make hay while the sun shines.
And as a follow-on to that, Chris, if you do the EIDL and or the payroll protection program, then you can't do the UE, correct?
The UE, unemployment?
Unemployment.
Okay. The unemployment is going to count as a reduction of your available funds in the paycheck protection program. So you cannot double dip.
Okay. That helps. Also, we had a follow-on here. Do you know about the Verizon grant, Chris?
I saw that the other day. I do know that Verizon is offering a grant. It's primarily
Is that
focused
the
on women.
same? Yeah, the question is that the same as an EIDL?
No,
Okay, that
this
answers.
this is a corporate program they have, and it's addressed primarily to women and minorities. And so I have not looked at that, haven't had a chance to look at it. I saw it Monday morning, and no, I don't know a lot about it.
Okay, and it also is for underserved areas too, just as a side note, Chris. So the three things were minority, women, and underserved areas, which might apply to Vashon.
We should get a Verizon representative on here.
Yes, we should. Okay, so one more. Well, we have a couple more actually. For filling out the payroll protection program, what if the 941s haven't been done yet for 2020 Q1?
It's my notes say that if they're available.
If they're available, so that means they can still file and not have that. Okay, and then for the stimulus check, what if extension was filed? What if an extension was filed for the 2019 taxes? Will the person not receive it?
No, they'll still receive it. Did they file a 2018 return? If the 2019 has not been filed, the 2018 will be used.
Ah, that's why you said it was so important to get your 2018 in.
If you don't have a 2018 or a 2019 in, you're going to wind up with zero.
Okay. Wow. Okay. And so another person, just because we're on the payroll protection program again, could you just go through that list of things that are needed for the application again verbally? You went kind of fast. I'm going to type while you do that so I can answer this question to the group.
Right. And Cheryl, I emailed that over to you this morning, Cheryl.
Great.
And there's one other thing I want to make sure we cover here before we quit. I'm going to go through this list. There's one other thing I want to go over, and that is the payroll tax deferral program. I just want to make sure we cover that. I realize right now we did not. I want to make sure we do.
Okay.
Okay. So you're going to apply for a paycheck protection program. You're going to need your application. You're going to need the articles of incorporation or your organization, your bylaws or operating agreement of the entity if you're an LLC. You need your 2019 and first quarter 2020, if completed, 941s, 940 for 2019, your state withholding, we don't have that here, and state unemployment taxes. And we need bank statements from all of 2019 and up through February of 2020. They want a 12-month trailing P&L. They want payroll summary reports. I think on this, if you get a payroll register for the period that you're like for 2019, or as our earlier call for the second, third, fourth quarter of 19 and first quarter 2020, you put that together, payroll register, and if you're using QuickBooks, it's pretty flexible. You can put that together pretty easily. Include your documentation of pension benefits paid and your health insurance benefits paid. You can get that from your monthly billing, say from Regents or from whoever is your administrator for your 401k. A breakdown of payroll if you're using vacation, severance pay, healthcare, and or retirement as qualifying. And they need the current ID of the borrower. So they're going to want copies of your driver's licenses to go along with that to verify who you are. Is that
super helpful, Chris? Thank you. That helps. And just as a reminder to everybody, we will post the list that Chris provided, and we already have one up as well on the information you need to pull on the VashonChamber.com site under COVID-19. I do have two more questions, Chris, if you have time to answer them.
I want to go through the payroll tax deferral real quickly. One of the things that people talk.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
One of the things that people talk about is this thing where you can defer your payroll tax deposits until the end of this year, split that out between the end of this year and the end of 2022. And I just want to make sure that you understand that the the delayed deposit allowed applies only to the employer's Social Security tax, only to that. So your federal income tax deposit is due as scheduled. Your employees' 6.2% Social Security tax is due as scheduled, as are the Medicare employer-employee and your state and local pension and any other withholding. They are due as scheduled. The only change is your 6.2% employer's Social Security tax. So a lot of people thought that this was a real bonanza because they could defer a large, but on a $10,000 payroll, the employer's share is only $620. So it's not as massive as some people may think it is. But taken over the context of say 8 weeks, that could be rather substantial. So anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. I just realized we didn't cover that, and I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it.
No, that's great. Thank you. There's so much here to learn. I know everybody is listening very, very keenly, and there's still a lot to decipher, and this is super helpful. So one question that came up is, do you happen to know whether you apply for unemployment through the state website if you are self-employed or sole proprietor?
Yes.
You happen to know?
Yes, you do.
Okay,
I've had several clients that have done that and have been successful. So yeah, as long as you do need to make sure your business license with the state of Washington is current, or they will not see you. But yeah.
Okay. If you apply for the payroll protection program and don't get it, can you go then to apply for an EIDL?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. And then another question that came in was, many of us are now not experiencing financial impact now, but anticipate future financial impact. For somebody who owns their own business, they've been trying to consolidate debt to prevent this impact being too hard down the road. But they're finding challenges being able to qualify for anything because they're not experiencing current impact. Do you think that they're going to face challenges as money runs out?
Well, the bottom line is we don't know what's going to happen when we exit out of this entire situation. You know, you talk to a bunch of economists and you get a bunch of different, predictions as to what's going to happen. We're going to have a V recession where we bounce out of this and the economy explodes. We have an L where we wind up in deflation and stagnation. Lord knows what's going to happen. So nobody knows. These programs here are not conditioned or on any kind of a pretext as to where you are today or where you're going to be tomorrow. And so they are not credit driven. They are not collateral driven. These are based upon you are in business today. We're basing these the funding on this as just to keep you going. The $10,000 is a flat amount, whether you happen to be a large grocery store or a mom and pop retail outlet or a service here on the island. It doesn't matter. $10,000 will come your way on that. Obviously, the smaller you are, the more impactful that's going to be. The Paycheck Protection Program obviously is going to have impact that's going to be dependent upon what your payroll costs and your labor costs are over the course of a year. So that's going to be varied in terms of its impact. But truly, I would definitely make application on those and get those things into the hopper so you can get that funding today.
Yeah.
These are not credit driven again. These are not collateral based. These are grants and forgivable loans that are being made. So take advantage of it.
And just to circle back up on the question about if you're self-employed or sole proprietor, should you go to the Washington State state for unemployment to file? I got a hot update in the Q&A from Deborah Diamond, who's going to be talking next Tuesday, and she said you should not try to file for self-employed unemployment until they roll out the new app April of 2020. Something new is coming for that, so hold on and please come to that webinar next week with Deborah. She's going to give everybody an update, and just to remind everybody, she's retired from the IRS and is going to be talking about unemployment issues and also specifically about people who are self-employed or sole proprietors. So that'd be a good thing. I just saw her send in that message, so I wanted to make sure everybody got that update. And then one last question. I think we are almost out of time. I think I have one more here, Chris. Any special considerations for 501c3s for the payroll protection program?
Not that I'm aware of. They're going to have very much the same filing requirements as everybody else, because the filing requirements do not deal necessarily with anything other than you're a viable business and that you've been in business. It did no requirements as to what your profit or loss is. And with a nonprofit, you always know what that answer is almost. So no, I don't think so. No, they have they don't prepare profit and losses the same as everybody else does, but they do have a statement of financial condition that can be included with the application. But yes.
Okay, great. So, and oh, just as a side note, Deborah said, do not apply, because if you do, it'll come out as zeros if you're self-employed for the unemployment. So hang tight on that, guys. We'll learn more. Chris, you really have been great. There's so much detail here, and I appreciate you taking the time to put all this in one place and help all of our folks here in Vashon be able to kind of navigate it. And it's really just so helpful. And of course, you know, if you don't have somebody you're working with from accounting, Chris can certainly, I think, help you guys out. You know how to get a hold of him. He's here on the island. And then just some other things that are coming up from a business resource standpoint. We have creating your online store and getting the word out with Katie Hermans on this Thursday, April 9th at 9 a.m., another webinar. So please join. She has some great ideas and some great examples, and will help people navigate that. I know if you aren't online doing a store, it is complicated trying to figure out how to handle payments and all of that. So, and how to make sure that you're keeping your inventory up to date and tracking. And then of course, there's the other parts that go with that, advertising it so people know you're actually online and can purchase there. So that was going to be with Katie. And then of course, as I mentioned, we have Deborah Diamond talking on April 14th, navigating tax stimulus and unemployment benefits for employees and the self-employed. And so we're so excited to have her join. And obviously she's listening on our webinar today, which I really appreciate the clarity on some of these things, because guys, we're learning as we go. And that's why we're doing these webinars, so people can get the latest information. And Chris, thank you so much for being up to date about all of these different items. And I know we're going to learn more as we go. One last thing we're planning from a business resource series, not last, we might have more after this as we hear more come out from the community, but we also are planning to do a tenant and landlord open forum on the 16th. If people have issues that they want to just kind of have an open dialogue around sort of how to navigate it. It is very tricky because people who own buildings have mortgages to pay on those buildings and need the rent, and people who have to pay the rent, of course, if they're businesses. So it's definitely a very integrated and tough conversation, and there's lots of different things to navigate there. So that'll be coming up. If you guys have other ideas for things you'd like to see on our resource webinar series around COVID-19, please email us at executivedirector@vashonchamber.com. We are trying our best to make sure that the information that we're putting up there is current and is vetted by the Vashon Be Prepared and the EOC, so it is reliable. We also just put up a virtual essential Vashon business guide. So if you are an essential business and want to get the word out about what you're doing with your business, please go there and fill that out. And then later this week, we are going to be launching on the Chamber's site an Ask the Experts office hours. And what we're going to be doing is offering up some people who have office hours just to kind of talk briefly with you one-on-one about either finance, like how to handle finance things, or employment issues. And so that's where we're at right now. And I hope Everybody is staying home. If you have to go out, I hope that you're wearing a mask and gloves and being extra careful so we can take care of everybody. Stay home and stay healthy, and or if you have to work and be out in an essential business, please make sure that you're taking all the appropriate precautions so we can all stay well. Anyway, with that, Chris, thank you so much for joining our webinar today. It was really helpful. And everybody, thanks for listening. Keep your eyes out. We'll be having more information coming out, okay? So guys, with that, have a great Tuesday. Signing off now.